They want to launch a new war. We've got to be against it. They want open borders. We've got to be against it. I mean, it's very simple. We know these are evil, anti-human, anti-freedom people, and we must stand against everything they stand for. Now, we can intellectualize and then always go down the road and look at why that's the case, but their interests are not the interest of free humanity. So it's very elementary for me.
That's a very, very good point. Let's get it real straight. These people not only don't care about us, they are antagonistic towards us. They want to destroy the human race and bring it under the heel of their global fascist dictatorship.
They want to irrevocably change what humans are in our society, the family, everything, till we are just empty biological androids, and their words that they program. This is the end of humanity. This is the extinction of humanity, is their stated goal in every document I've got by their transhumanist futurists. These are human-hating scum.
This is what we're dealing with, and therefore, as you quite rightly say, if they're for it, then it's bad for the human race. And we've got to be a bit more kind of streetwise about this and not see everything in black and white. The question of gun ownership, I've never had a gun. I don't want a gun. I don't want to use a gun. I'm not into any of that stuff, but a lot of people have guns in America. The question that comes up is, should people have guns or should people not have guns? And that's a debate, okay? But it's not the debate that's at the heart of what's happening now. The question should be, why do the people who have a deep hatred for humanity, why do they want to disarm the American population now? That's the key thing we ought to be looking at. We can have these debates about this and immigration. The question is, why does the cabal want to do it? And the answer is always because it advances their agenda towards the global fascist dictatorship in which, as you rightly say, it won't just be an economic dictatorship, a political dictatorship. We're talking about a genetic dictatorship where they will not only own our bodies and have literally lawful ownership on our bodies. That's where they're going. But they will genetically control us and control us through microchips. That's where they want to go. And if we're going to get pulled away into diversions of debates about this and debates about that, there's one debate at the moment until we've sorted this. Why do they want to do A, B, C, and D? And that's the question we need to keep asking all the time to keep on top of where we're going. And
we know what they want. They're so arrogant that they all write white papers on government health care, on the environment movement, on cap and trade. They admit it's to shut down industry, bankrupt everyone, have a huge state that's the only thing that's funded, that literally absorbs humanity and begins accelerating their soft kill operations. We know they've already been introducing poisons into our environment and into the vaccines and foods. We've caught them. We've got countless documents where they admit they're doing it. Now they want to accelerate that up to a hot kill level like we've seen in areas of Africa. And thank God you're out there exposing these people.
Well, you know, there are people that know there's a conspiracy. There's people that know that there is a ridiculously few people who are pulling the strings of the world. But we've still got a long way to go with a lot of people to fully understand the scale of what we're dealing with. The rabbit hole goes so deep, it's staggering. And we're not even dealing with just human entities. We're dealing with non-human entities. We're dealing with entities that operate outside the field of vision of what we call visible light, which our eyes can see and appears to be this world. There are other worlds.
Well, David, I'll say this.
Penetrate this one, and it's involving those two. So this is really, really deep stuff that we're dealing with here. Not just what appears to be men in dark suits sitting around a table deciding their next move. Much bigger than that.
Well, no, I agree with you because I've studied the elite, and they believe they're in contact with entities. I've been to Bohemian Grove. I've covered Skull and Bones. I've read the Pentagon's own writings. They believe they're being given, every one of them. It says they're channeling things, that they're being directed at the highest levels. At the mid-levels, it's hedonists, it's Satanists, it's people that want money and power. At the top, these are very focused people working 18 hours a day And they believe they're working for an entity that I can only describe as the devil. People can call it whatever they want. David, stay there. Let's look at some other contemporary issues, and from that window expand and go down the rabbit hole from different angles. We'll be back with David Icke. DavidIcke.com is his website. I'm Alex Jones with Infowars.com. David Icke is our guest. So we got into the border issue and how they're overrunning sovereign nations because the globalists want to remake the world in their system. So any culture, whether it's good or bad, they want it out of the way for the corporate culture. This is a short segment. Let's get into the oil spill. David Icke, the oil spill. What's your research on that?
Well, the appalling things happening in the Gulf of Mexico now are a classic example of the way the web, the Illuminati web, interfaces with different aspects of itself to create a coordinated policy and a coordinated agenda. I mean, you've got someone, for instance, like Peter D. Sutherland, who was non-executive chairman of BP until a few months ago. He's also non-executive chairman of Goldman Sachs International. He was the director of the World Trade Organization. He was the director of, the director general of the World Trade Organization. He was the director of the Bank of Scotland in the run-up to the period where it crashed in 2008 and had to be bailed out by the taxpayer. He's been on the steering committee of the Bilderberg Group. He's a chairman of the Trilateral Commission. He's a chairman of the London School of Economics, one of the great Illuminati universities on the planet, created by the Fabian Society. He's financial advisor to the Vatican, brought up in a Jesuit school. The Jesuits, of course, are a major player in this global web. He's been one of the major people in Europe pressing for more and more power for the European Union. And while he was non-executive chairman of BP, you had a guy called Lord Brown, who got out before the stuff hit the fan over the Gulf of Mexico. He was so appalling as chief executive of BP that Tony Blair described him as his favorite businessman, so you can see how bad he was. And it was Lord Brown who instigated the policy at BP of cutting safety and cutting all...
yeah, they've got more violations in Houston alone. Yeah. I saw the number. It's like over 100 times what other oil companies have combined, and they're the top fake environmentalist company that, with Enron, created the carbon tax scam with Al Gore.
Exactly, and this is how it all interfaces. This is how the web works. You see BP, but it's not just BP. BP's connected to Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs is connected to Halliburton, and so it goes on.
And don't forget Queenie. She owns a big part of it.
Yeah, Lord Brown was chief executive of BP when you had that massive explosion at the refinery in Texas City, which people, of course, were killed, and another environmental disaster in so many ways. And he instigated this BP policy, not because they were struggling for money, we must cut costs, no, because he wanted to expand the profits of BP, and one way he could do it was to cut costs. So he cut costs on safety, on checks, and all the rest of it. And that was the sequence of events that eventually led to what happened in the Gulf of Mexico. And then when you look at Goldman Sachs again, as I mentioned with Peter D. Sutherland, selling 44% of its shares in BP in the run-up to what happened in the Gulf. Tony Hayward, the chief executive of BP that followed Lord Brown, sold a lot of his shares in the run-up.
Yeah, over a third. Obama dumped his Vanguard stocks in it. They all dumped.
It's got so many red flags all over it that it would, A, prior knowledge, and B, that the thing was a disaster, not waiting to happen. The disaster was made to happen. And then you look at what happened after that, and so many mysteries kind of fade away when you know the story and what the goal is. So the next mystery in all this is why do BP and the federal government clearly have no real interest in reacting to this disaster, to cleaning up the beaches, to doing what is necessary. Why countries were turned away when they offered help? It's because they want this disaster to be as big as possible. Yes, to offer solutions like the carbon tax and all the rest of it. Now their climate change scam has been falling apart. But also there is a war by this cabal against the United States. They want to destroy the United States militarily, they destroy it Economically, they want to destroy everything it stands for, because that has to be brought under the heel of the global cabal if the world government is to have total power. No more superpowers, otherwise you don't have total power.
Now, you've got the 10 regions, as the UN says, with the 10 global directors. This has been on record since the 60s, which they're now moving towards, and that's what's so amazing. They use the U.S. as their henchman, as their funding mechanism, while the U.S. gets all the blame for the global imperial takeover. And now, as they get ready to destroy us, they're moving towards devaluing the dollar. The IMF, World Bank are criticizing our monetary systems. The UN is posing as the savior with the global cashless currency. So they use us for their dirty work and then flush us down the toilet when they're done.